When a crime is committed, the perpetrator inevitably leaves behind something, a description, DNA, or physical evidence. This is the criminal's print on the scene. Welcome to the Criminal Prints Podcast, Episode 5.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Criminal Prints Podcast, Episode 5. Thank you for joining us. We're thrilled to have you. This is Zach.
And I'm Jaron.
And today we're going to be talking about the murder of Terry Missy Beavers. Missy was her nickname, and throughout the rest of this episode we're going to refer to her by Missy. Missy Beavers was born on August 9th, 1970, and she graduated from high school in 1988, Saxborough High School. After this, she attended Tarleton State University and graduated in 1995 with a BA degree in science. She was an extremely friendly individual. Everybody that knew her, talked to her, said she was just very easy to get along with. And she was a mother of 3 children.
She was married to Brandon Beavers. They were married in 1998, so they were approaching 20 years of marriage when she was killed. She was very passionate about exercise. In fact, she was the instructor for a group they called themselves the Gladiators. The night before she was killed, it was April 17th at 7:55 p.m. This is in 2016. She posts on social media, which was really common for her. She was really into social media because she used it to promote her exercise groups and all her lifestyle stuff and that. She posted, "If it's raining, we're still training. No excuses, you are gladiators." So the point of that was just to make sure all her students knew that they could come to the workout session in the morning and it was still going to be there. Normally it was held outdoors, but it was raining, so they were going to hold it inside the next day. At 9:23, she posted on social media again that she was going to go to bed because she's been up since 3:30 a.m. that morning.
So we know that at 9:30 p.m. she calls her husband, and Brandon is his name. So she calls Brandon, and Brandon was actually on a fishing trip in Mississippi. He had arrived there in Mississippi just at 4:16 that day, and so he was 600 miles away.
And he had actually flown there.
Exactly, and they were able to verify that through the plane ticket and all witnesses and whatnot. So the day we're going to talk about is April 18th. And at 3:50 a.m., an unknown person breaks into the Creekside Church in Midlothian, Texas, which is actually 25 miles south of Dallas. And it's not a very big town. In fact, in 2010, the population of it was 18,037. So this individual broke the glass in a side door to get in. And I'm sure Jaron will agree, the person's outfit is extremely interesting.
Yeah, this person was dressed unusually, we'll say. They were in full tactical gear. So that's a helmet, a vest. The vest said police in the front and the back. They had like knee pads, wearing all black, tactical boots, etc. They also had tools of some type, a hammer, a pry bar.
And we know the pry bar they used to break that side window to get in. So we know at 4:16 a.m., Missy arrives at the church. And at 4:18 a.m., she is seen on camera that the church has, because they have their own security cameras. And she's seen walking towards this killer.
To be clear, she couldn't see the killer. We just know in hindsight that he was there.
Exactly. So she walked past him at some point. And we know that she leaves the sight of the camera. And at this point, unfortunately, her and the killer are not seen again on camera. At some point, Missy and the killer unfortunately meet, and a fight ensues. There are clear signs of a struggle in the area and to Missy's body, and unfortunately Missy is killed. They struck her with some sort of pointed tool, possibly the hammer. the claw of the hammer, possibly some screwdriver, something like that. But we know that she was hit. She had puncture wounds to the head and the chest.
So at about 5 o'clock, some of her students began to arrive, and she was found in the church, in the southwest corner of the church. Like Zach said, she had puncture wounds to the head and the chest. She was completely unresponsive. Just 3 minutes later, police were dispatched, and by 5:10, the police had arrived at the scene. They notified her husband of the death, and he began heading home, arriving at home at 3 p.m. that night. It was a 9-hour drive from Mississippi to their place in Texas.
So at 3:30 p.m., the police held a press conference and released the first footage of the masked killer walking around the church. So the footage that they have is before she arrived, we know. But they hope that this individual could be identified by the distinct gait that they had. They initially believed that it was a robbery gone wrong, but then when they saw this video, it completely changed their mind. And on a side note, nothing was stolen from the church.
Correct. And Missy also still had her wedding ring. For example, she had valuables in the car, and it was all still there. So at this press conference, we got kind of our first look at the killer, and he was on video in the church. From that video, we could see him walking around, checking in rooms for no apparent reason, kind of looking in cabinets. Every now and then he'd randomly break a piece of glass or a window. At one point, he tried to get into a locked door.
And he was extremely unsuccessful. To me, it looked like this person had no idea what they were doing, because this person tries to get in and tries for a few seconds, realizes, I don't know what I'm doing here, and just moves right on to the next door.
Yeah, it was kind of strange looking, as if they thought they could just break into a door real easy, and it was that simple. And you kind of get a look at the killer of being an amateur of sorts. From the video, you could see that the person had a very strange gait. Their feet pointed out as they walked, especially the right foot. Arms swung. They had a very nonchalant posture. And you could tell from the way they walked that it was possible there was an injury on the right foot or leg.
And that's where it kind of becomes difficult, because I agree it very well could have been an injury, maybe to the leg or the foot. But it's hard to say whether it was kind of a temporary injury or it was something that's permanently how they walked.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I will point out that a couple other things that you could tell from the video is it appeared to be a light-skinned person, and they appeared to be overweight.
So the police have come out with quite a few search warrants on this case, and one of the search warrants that came out really early said that she was killed from a head wound, that the instrument was unknown. So we know the next day, on April 19th, they performed an autopsy, and the autopsy was performed at 7:30 a.m. Unfortunately, as the police do in so many cases, they withheld the cause of death because they wanted to be able to use that at a later time if necessary to help identify the correct suspect. So at 5:50 p.m. that night, they signed another search warrant for Missy's iPad and iPhone information. And also, we know that on April 21st, a warrant was issued for the AT&T cell tower data. So what they wanted here is they were hoping that the killer had a phone that pinged on the morning of the murder. So they did a 5-mile radius of the church between 3 and 5 a.m. on the day of the murder. So this is the information that we got from Missy's phone.
We got that she had financial and marital problems. They learned that since January of that same year, 2016, she had been engaging in a, quote, flirtatious and familiar relationship with a man on LinkedIn, the professional social networking site. Then they checked text messages from Missy's phone as well as from the other individual's phone, and they found messages that appeared to be, quote, intimate in nature. They also were able to see that after each conversation, the messages were deleted. And I think that leads to the pretty obvious conclusion that there may have been an affair.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't look good when you're deleting each message after. That's not a good sign.
No, it doesn't. And Brandon, the husband, was open with police that they had financial and marital issues.
So on April 22nd, another press conference is held and additional security footage is released of the suspect in the church. So this is where the case gets interesting, but it isn't quite what it appears. Brandon's father, Randy, he drops off a blood-stained shirt at the dry cleaners. This is at the super center of Midlothian, and this is just 96 hours after the murder. So Randy's story was that two dogs had gotten a fight when he was at a family member's house, and that he picked up the dog to take him to the vet, and that's when the blood got on his shirt. So clearly the dry cleaners employee thought, oh my goodness, this is very suspicious to be turning in a shirt of blood.
Yeah, and you would think that that's really suspicious. So they did the reasonable thing, and they called the police and told them, hey, we have a shirt here with blood all over it. Do you want to check it out? And they did. They obtained a warrant. They performed a DNA test, and they found that it was non-human DNA.
So in addition to this, the vet backed up Randy's story of the dog fight and why the blood was on the t-shirt.
Yeah, so we had DNA and the vet and another witness that said this is what happened. So it kind of was a much ado about nothing. But at the time, it was a big deal.
So then on May 20th, we'll see a trend. The police are really trying in this case, and they've held a lot of press conferences, and they're doing everything they can do to bring a conclusion to this case. So they hold another press conference, and they highlight that they are looking for a light color car that was at a nearby business. And this business, it's an outdoors shop. It's SWFA Outdoors, and it's roughly a mile away from the church. And this was at 2 o'clock in the morning. They've got this vehicle pulling in, which looked like a 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima. And it's kind of strange because when they pull in, they turn the lights.
Yeah, before they're even off the main road and into the parking lot, they shut their headlights off. It's really strange behavior in the middle of the night.
Yeah, 2 in the morning.
So we're going to go over some of the suspects and some of the traits of the killer. So as of now, it is believed that the killer is 5'8". Initially, the cops said it's a male, but it didn't take them very long to back off that statement and just say, we don't know the gender. So, Zach, you've watched the videos. Do you have any opinions on what the gender is?
It's very difficult to tell. My initial thought was that it was a female, but I'm right on the fence. I could go 50-50 at this point because it was a bigger person. They walk at a very slow pace. So, for example, we'll post this video to Facebook so you can see it. But when they're swinging the hammer, it's a really soft swing. It doesn't look like they're in any type of hurry whatsoever. But it's just so difficult because they have so much gear on. You can't really see anything, unfortunately.
Yeah, and at first I actually believed it to be a woman. It just seemed to kind of be feminine traits walking. But the more I've watched, I think it's a man and just a heavy-set man. I kind of wonder if there was drugs or alcohol influencing this person. A few times they had kind of their hand on the wall as if they needed balance or they were holding themselves up. Like Zach said, they'd swing at the windows and when they tried to break into the door, it's just there was so little effort put into it. One suspect we'll talk about is Bobby Henry. He actually had a search warrant issued on him. We know he had access to police gear. In fact, he was in possession of a helmet and some other gear because at one point he had been a cop. He was let go from the force because there was multiple complaints of a sexual nature. And he was actually arrested, but he was not arrested for anything involving this case. It's because he had child pornography on some of the seized electronics.
Ouch, that's not good.
Yeah, it's not good indeed. there is a video out there of him actually working security at, interestingly enough, at her funeral, and he walks very similar to how the killer walked.
It was extremely similar. We know that police have stated that Brandon and Randy, the father-in-law, have rock-solid alibis, and this has been corroborated through independent sources. So Brandon was obviously 600 miles away in Mississippi, and Randy was in California, and the police looked into both these individuals pretty hard, and there's no doubt that they were where they were. 3 days before the murder, search warrants showed that Missy had received a creepy and strange LinkedIn message that she showed to a friend. And it was from a man that neither of them knew, but the friend couldn't remember the name of the individual, unfortunately. But creepy and strange. Did this person have anything to do with the crime, or is this just kind of a weird what in the world message?
Yeah, it certainly makes you wonder. But you would think that as much attention as this has got, and with as much investigating that's gone on, that if it was strange enough, they would have had more information on it.
And the same goes with the car, because they have really posted they've been looking for that car. They said that the person with the vehicle, is not necessarily a suspect currently. But I would also think that if this owner of this car saw this and said, hey, they think I have remotely anything to do with this crime, let me go clear this up and say, hey, that's not me. This is what I was doing. I would think that the car would be a key piece of that too. And clearly nobody has come forward with any information about who owns the car.
So the current status of the investigation is this. There were rumors early that a gun was involved. Police have confirmed there was a gun, but it was inside her vehicle outside of the church and was not part of the killing. As of March of 2019, investigators have received 2,000 tips, but the case remains unsolved and no suspects have been named.
And that's unfortunate, because they are really trying, and that's a lot of tips. And they were saying that, nothing's too big or too small. They're working every tip they can. So on the 3-year anniversary, the police issued a statement that said that it is our sincere belief that the murder will be solved through collaboration with the public. And they also said a few other things. They said that we believe that somebody who has not yet come forward may have that vital piece of information that to this date unknowingly is being withheld. So, they're saying, hey, maybe you don't even know you're withholding something, but come to us with anything you have, please. And we know that investigators have presented the case to the Homicide Investigator Association for review, but unfortunately no new substantial investigative work was generated from this.
In an April 2019 statement, they said in April 2019, a statement was released, quote, Midlothian police investigators are diligently working with professional outside resources and are determined to see this case reach closure. We continue to follow up on leads and tips as they are developed. We continue to benefit from a number of new, highly advanced investigative techniques. So this brings us into our theories and opinions on the case. So as far as motives, what do you see for possible motives for something like this?
When a spouse is killed, they always go to the surviving partner, spouse, and they investigate them the most. But we know that she was possibly cheating on Brandon. And to me, that would be the biggest motive. Possibly a jealous wife, somebody that was upset over the affair. Even though Brandon and Randy have solid alibis, is it possible, and I'm not saying they did, I'm just asking, is it possible that they arranged the killing to take place? I'm sure police have looked into their financials and not seen anything, but definitely an option.
Do you think that the fact that it seemed to be a crime of passion in a way, where it was an up close and a brutal killing, does that lend any credence to the idea that maybe it was somebody involved with her?
I think it absolutely does. I think personally it was somebody that maybe got rubbed the wrong way from her previously, or possibly something to do with the affair. I think that absolutely is huge, that it was an up close and personal crime. I think that says a lot.
So the other possible motive would be maybe she just walked in on a random vandalism. But it would be really strange that he would panic and kill her, because he was fully covered in tactical gear. The witness would have been no good. He could have just left.
Yeah, I agree. To me, it looked like, when you watch the video, he didn't spend very long at all at a certain door. He'd look in. To me, it looked like he was targeting something. He was looking for someone specifically, who would have been Missy.
So you believe Missy was most likely targeted?
I absolutely believe she was targeted. And also, we know that there was no sexual motives with the killing, so that wasn't any part of the motivation. When you watch the video, ask yourself too, was the killer familiar with the church? To me, it looked like they knew where they were going. They knew the layout of the church. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, but that's definitely possible. It's a little hard to tell because, like we said, they're just so nonchalant. They don't seem to have any purpose or cause, and they're just kind of there. So as far as DNA, police did collect some DNA at the crime scene, and they did send it to a lab, but it yielded no results because they didn't have enough for a sample. Maybe, possibly in the future, they'll have something?
It's definitely possible that they will get something in the future. Because of the advances in DNA, you're needing less of a sample to get a result. So I hope and pray that they will be able to obtain a DNA profile in the future. So if you have any tips, please contact the authorities. We would love to see this case solved. It's a very intriguing case, and unfortunately there's just not a whole lot of evidence to go off of at this point. So your tips can be left through Crime Stoppers of Ellis County, and the phone number there is 972-937-7297, or you can text MIDL plus your tip to 847-411.
You can also reach out to the Midlothian Police Department through Facebook or social media. You can give them a Facebook message, or if you go to their Facebook page, there's a tip link on the top of it. You can click on that and send your tip in.
So please, if you know anything at all, please contact the authorities and give them your tip so that can help them in the investigation. So that is the episode of Terry Missy Beavers. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any suggestions on our next episode, please check out our Facebook messages on Facebook or our Twitter. And everybody have a wonderful day.